Welcome, everyone. This is a community of practice session for the Illinois Work-Based Learning Innovation Network. I'm Heather Penzak out of an organization called Education System Center, which is based out of Northern Illinois University, but we do a ton of work in the kind of college and career pathway space. Won't go into all those details, but definitely look us up, check us out. But one of my main things that I focus on is work-based learning, and IWIN is a network launched back in October, actually, of last year, to really just bring folks together from throughout the state, talk about how you all are doing work-based learning in an innovative way, in a scalable way, in a way that actually addresses students who aren't typically accessing these experiences, to make sure that any work-based learning we're doing is providing broader, more equitable access. And this year, it's been really fun. What we've kind of kicked off here are doing the full WBL work-based learning continuum of experiences for a certain industry sector. So for today, our industry sector focus is in education. So you'll hear from some different presenters about how they're addressing those different components along the work-based learning continuum to directly support students who are interested in becoming educators. And so we'd love to just hear kind of a quick piece about who's here today. We have a decent crowd, so I won't have you all unmute or anything like that, but just if you could please go ahead and put in the chat your name, title, organization, and we'd love to know, who has been your most influential educator and why. That might be a longer response than maybe you put in a chat, but it may be as concise as you can make it, or feel free to put a paragraph, that's fine too. And I think educators, right, they are definitely the people who you see in classrooms, but all of us are educators in many different ways. You've had educators outside of the classroom, but would just love to kind of get you in the mindset of an educator and building towards that type of a pathway. And think about that person who might have been your most influential educator. And they may be someone in your personal network, maybe they're someone famous who might still be in your personal network. Wonderful, thanks, Susan. Yeah, thinking about your dance instructor, academic writing. Ooh, writing for sure. I feel like I could still continue to get some influence in my writing. I think I'm fine at it. I just tend to procrastinate on it. Wonderful, thank you for these. Yeah, seeing a lot of like in post-secondary, or definitely those instructors who are kind of doing like hands-on pieces with you all. We'd love to know if there's any whys, if there's kind of like something they said to you or something that's just kind of like stuck with you throughout these years. Well, thank you all. As you kind of continue to put these in here, definitely thinking about being much more capable, right? As we support students in an education pathway through the coursework that they're taking, for the work-based learning that they're doing, they are ultimately gonna, hopefully be someone that someone would put on and respond to a question like this, right? What we're trying to do is really inspire individuals to become educators, to have that influence, to sit with folks for a long time. I think we could also flip the question and maybe talk about who has been an educator who maybe, I don't know exactly how to say it, but might have like caused the most harm or said something most negative to you, right? That does continue to also sit with you. And so there's different pieces as we think about being an educator. And so there's different experiences, different things we need to make sure that our students and our young people are engaging in, so they become the educators that we might want to write them down and respond to this question with. That would be a very cool thing. I hope. I used to be a high school freshman biology teacher, so I don't know, maybe I'm on either end. Maybe I was influential, or maybe they were like, yeah, it was Mr. Work at the time. They were like, that was not so great. Hopefully the latter. Anyways, oh, I did put this on here. Look at me. Sometimes I forget that I actually do things ahead of myself. So I gave an overview of IWIN and kind of what the focus of this network is. I do know we have some newer folks here on the line, but there's a link there. And so I put this presentation. I'm actually going to just copy paste it in here one more time. I love seeing all these different influential educator responses, but you can go into this presentation. There's going to be a bunch of different links throughout. And so we do have a whole IWIN resource hub that has resources across the work-based learning continuum for you to access, templates that are ready to go, other kind of guidance documents. If you're not subscribed already, you can subscribe to our newsletter where you get communication about new resources or upcoming events. But again, it's all these pieces here, just really bringing folks together to build connections, to share their models, and think about how we're doing work-based learning, again, in that broader, more accessible way, and how we're really building social capital, especially when we're thinking about students who don't typically access these types of experiences or might be underrepresented, thinking it specifically about our Black and Latinx students. And so what we're going to talk through today is the work-based learning continuum. This is defined through the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary. Those of you who might be working closely with like the College and Career Pathway Endorsement Framework or other components throughout the state, right? All these definitions are included within the dictionary, and I've actually included them here as well, just in a link to the dictionary too. Not going to dive into these. These are going to be dove into as the presenters share their different models, but through the dictionary, it's really just saying like, in Illinois, how do we define these? And how do we say if an individual is engaging in career exploration, a team-based challenge, or a career development experience, they're meeting this kind of minimum threshold for quality, right? So it's meant to be explicit enough for that quality piece, but also broad enough to encompass a variety of experiences and be adapted to the different contexts that we know exist throughout Illinois and the different students and individuals that we might be serving through these types of experiences. So these are here for you as a reference point as you hear about the different models today and how they align to these definitions. Also wanted to flag for you all, education continues to be just a hot topic. People love to talk about education. They love to talk about teachers, like people love it for better or for worse, right? And so there's a lot of initiatives in Illinois, highlighting just a few here. But one of them is the Education Model Program of Study. And so that's been developed. Ed Systems was a part of that process, working closely with the Illinois Community College Board to map out kind of that high school to post-secondary sequence and occupations that are aligned with that. So we recently hosted a webinar on that. So put in the link to the recording and presentation here. If you are familiar with the College and Career Pathway Endorsement Framework, that is a signifier basically on a student's transcript from high school that they completed a certain set of career-focused coursework, work-based learning, that they're academically ready for math and English. If students are earning that, more and more there's currency being built for that in Illinois. So the Golden Apple Foundation, for example, if students have that, they become finalists to then access a $23,000 scholarship. Northern Illinois University and Sauk Valley Community College are also some examples of post-secondary institutions that are offering tuition credit or acceptance into different programs for students who are having that College and Career Pathway endorsement. There's also initiatives in Illinois. There's a pretty massive funding coming from the State Board of Education that's highlighted here in both the red and the purple on the map, where they're really funding opportunities for schools to build out their education pathways. We also, through Ed Systems, convene a group called Scaling Education Pathways in Illinois, or SEPI. And so they're kind of also highlighted here on the map. So you can see different ways that communities are represented and are being supported to build their education pathways in a more robust way. You can see there's also work to be done to continue to address some communities and get deeply involved to address their teacher shortage, education pathway, but included some links from there too from our SEPI work. So happy reading on those. I wanted to flag too on the iWin site. So team-based challenges is a space we're going to talk about. And we do have some different templates and ideas for inspiration there. If you're thinking about how to put in kind of this project-based learning with an industry mentor, so a mentor who has expertise in the education field, we have ready to go templates. We also have, again, these ideas for inspiration for you on that hub. I would also love, as you're hearing about pieces today, if you have a team-based challenge model or other work-based learning model and education pathway or otherwise, please definitely send those to me. We'd love to include them on our iWin site and just continue to grow the resources that are there. Anywho, what I really want to move on to is our actual presenters, but wanted to give you a bit of a lay of the land, some context there. So we have two different presentations today. The first one is going to be from Southern Illinois, the Future Teachers Coalition there, and we have Brooke May and Hannah Middleton joining us. And then also wanted to talk about, as you engage in these different work-based learning experiences and the different kind of industry areas, CTSOs, or your career tech and student organizations, are an incredible resource for you all. And so we have Dr. Lindsay Jensen here today, who's going to talk through Educators Rising, going to give some background on the program and also how they can help support work-based learning in your community. And I know Brooke and Hannah are going to refer to Educators Rising a little bit, so I think that'll be a good kind of tee up then to Lindsay. So, whew, I'm done. I'm going to turn it now to our first presenters here, Brooke and Hannah. Oh, Brooke, I think you're muted. I gotcha.
Okay, now let me try it again. Everybody has the Zoom faux pas, that's me. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and inviting us to speak to everyone about our little corner of Illinois way down here in the South. Myself and my counterpart, Hannah Middleton, will be speaking to you a little bit about our creation of the Southern Illinois Future Teachers Coalition. A little bit about the experience if you partner with us in this grant, what they can expect to receive, and kind of talk to you about those experiences. And then we're going to finish up with kind of diving in a little bit deeper into what we do for career exploration, team-based challenges, and work-based learning. So we'll go ahead and, are you going to control the slides for me? Beautiful. Okay, well, there we are. Look, isn't that fantastic? So we are grant coordinators through the Illinois State Board of Education CTE Career Pathways Grant. It was written by Shawnee Community College and John A. Logan College, but we are actually employees of Vienna High School. So I do the northern sites, which are high schools that lead into John A. Logan, and Hannah is responsible for the southern sites of high schools that lead into Shawnee Community College. So we're covering the bottom portion of Southern Illinois, and we're making a lot of progress. So we'll go ahead and dive into our next slide and kind of talk a little bit about some people asking, so what is SIFC, or the Southern Illinois Future Teachers Coalition? So we're comprised of 9 local high schools, 3 colleges, which are John A. Logan, Shawnee Community College, and Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. Our grant is lasting for another 3 years. And currently right now we're serving over 150 high school students. There are only 2 of us doing it all, but since we started getting into the high schools, we've had 4 additional high schools contact us to see if they could start using us as a resource to build the educator rising clubs, start the dual credit. So word of mouth is spreading, and we have plans for the spring semester to go out into other high schools within our area that do not have dual credit, do not have education clubs. So we're really wanting to spread this news throughout the entirety of Southern Illinois. Next slide, please. So when people want to know, how did you get there? We developed a sort of pipeline where if you are brand new and you have no idea what to do, all the way up to you're up and running and flying with it, we've created a sort of pathway that you can hop on at any time and take off with it. So some of the clubs we're trying to initiate, they have nothing. So we go into a school, talk to them about the importance of creating an educators rising club, what that looks like, how do you recruit students? Then we move on to those dual credit education classes. So once you have that pool of education-minded students, what we need to do to keep feeding those students and giving them those dual credit opportunities, hands-on opportunities, career exploration opportunities, which is step 3. Those vary a lot from school to school because just regionally, Hannah does the southern part. They are really into the outdoor nature exploration. So she's doing a lot of outdoor, like Department of Natural Resources things. Students are really interested in that. I'm a little bit further north. Our career exploration of what students are wanting is completely different. So we're really taking a regional approach and custom tailoring each school to what their culture and climate needs. So in the next step, we're talking about building a community of educators. I don't know how it is the rest of Illinois. Down here, we have some pretty hard set boundaries between high schools. High school rivalries are huge. We're trying to break down those barriers. I see some nodding. Yes, yes. You know, it's horrible if you cheer for the other person's football team. We're trying to break down those barriers and create a community instead of competition. Our schools are so small down here, they can't be lone islands, that they have to start pooling resources. We have a couple of club sponsors that are going to do a student swap. They are linking up resources to get new teacher, educator, club sponsors up and running with ideas. So we really are trying to make a community. And as an ultimate result, we want to see an increased college enrollment. We're still in our first year. We haven't hit a graduation yet to see if our numbers are increased, but that's our ultimate goal, is to increase those college enrollments and then to hire local graduates, because we know that most people return within just a very short radius of where they went to school. Most of the time, that's where you had that teacher that inspired you. You had your love of learning, where you just feel like you fit in. You want to go back there. So we're building on that. So really keeping these kids in their community, building with other high schools so they can form those partnerships. Next slide. So then I'm going to let Hannah talk to you a little bit about what it's like when you join partnership with us in the grant, talking about the 3 different views: students, sponsors, and schools. So I'm going to hand it off to her.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. I am going to talk about the next couple slides, so we can go ahead and there we go. Okay, so we are, this slide kind of goes over our student experience. Like Brooke mentioned, we have about 150 students involved in our clubs and dual credit classes right now, which might seem like a small amount if you're from a bigger area, but that's a pretty large sample of kids from some of our tiny schools where there might only be, I think one of our schools only has 18 graduates this year. So we have a pretty small student population, and we're getting pretty big results already. So the students can expect from us, we're offering college credit. Right now we're doing 4 dual credit education classes. So students can, in theory, graduate with all 4 of those classes finished, and they're ready to jump into education at the college level. So they have Introduction to Education, Introduction to Special Education, Human Growth and Development, and Diversity in Schools. So we're offering all of those right now. We're also offering scholarships. So one of the big things with upping local college enrollment, because that's really what we're focusing on, is creating incentives. And we're doing that through building some relationships with Shawnee, John A, and SIU. So Brooke and I have written into our grant that we have 4 scholarships we're giving out this year for students who go through this program with us and then apply and commit to going to one of those 3 local colleges. And we're also working with SIU to do some additional things. There's talk of book stipends and living in the learning community, getting priority for things like that. So we're really trying to collaborate at that level. ECE level 1 credentials, we're reimbursing teachers to get certified to teach that, but we're also helping students take that virtually online, which they can do as part of either their family and consumer science classes or their dual credit classes. Collaborative events, we are trying, I know Brooke mentioned this, but we're really trying to break down those barriers because there is a lot of rivalry from our local schools. So one big kind of fun thing we're doing this year that is also linking in as one of our team-based challenges is we are taking all 150 of our students to Touch of Nature at the SIU campus for a day of team building, high ropes course, looking at how we can they can write their own lesson plans and do their own education plans based around that event. Endorsements and MicroCredentials through Educators Rising, and also 2 of our 9 schools are already part of the College and Career Pathways endorsement, and we're trying to get more of them on that track. So between that and the CCPE has them doing 60 hours in local schools, which is what this picture is from Cobden High School, which they are one of our Career and College Pathways schools, and they have kids getting out every single week to go into classrooms and teach, and those kids are getting really awesome experiences teaching in the classroom, so it's pretty neat. Next slide. For club sponsors, it might be hard to tell in this one, but there's a club sponsor in there. But the club sponsors, what our club sponsors are doing are they're organizing the meetings, they're recruiting students. Brooke and I are helping with a lot of that for our schools that are relatively new. A few of our schools already had established programs, so they could just kind of take the ball and run with it. But for the majority of our schools, they didn't. So we're helping with that too, helping the sponsors come up with ideas for meetings, organize guest speakers, all that kind of stuff. And it seems to be going pretty well so far. We have sponsors for all of our 9 clubs, and Brooke and I are working on getting more other places. We are providing Educators Rising curriculum free of charge to every school. And we're also doing reimbursement for teachers to get college courses and training reimbursements. So most people already have a teacher in their school. They might not know it who could teach their dual credit classes. And a lot of our sponsors do both. But if there's a couple classes they're missing, we're helping reimburse for those so that we can get as many teachers in our local high schools as possible that can teach these dual credit education classes. So that is a big part of it. And we've been really lucky so far with that. So next slide. Okay, for the schools, we're trying to really sell this to schools so that it isn't a burden on them, I guess. A lot of schools might see this as financial or, a burden in some way, and we're trying to make it more appealing. So we're trying to start this really at the junior high level so that these teachers don't have to work as hard to recruit for their clubs. They already have people interested when they go in. So Brooke and I are working with the 2 community colleges to go into all of the local high schools and do junior high career fairs. So we are offering that to all of our 9 schools this year and expanding it as time goes on. We also are helping provide curriculum for the dual credit classes, the Educators Rising curriculum, the assistance, like I mentioned in the previous slide, with certifying those dual credit teachers. We're linking all those dual credit teachers up with the colleges so that they have access to all the syllabus, all the materials that the colleges have as well. And the big thing is just getting those schools to have the opportunity to train the teachers who are going to come back to their schools. I know down here, the majority of, a lot of our teachers come from the local high schools. I know in my particular high school that I work in, most of the people who work here are from here. And so giving the schools the opportunity to inspire those kids to come back and work for them, I think is a really good opportunity. Next slide. Okay, we're going to go through the 3 big things: career exploration, team-based challenges, and work-based experiences. These are 3 things that we've built into this 5C program as part of the grant. And obviously they're a big part of the college and career pathways stuff as well. And we really wanted to embed this. So we went ahead and broke down these 3 things and talked about what each of our schools is doing. I'll talk about the first couple and then I'll turn it back over to you, Brooke.
Okay.
The first big one is junior high career fairs. So I know I mentioned that briefly. We're also using CIS Junior, which is a career placement tool. So we're going out and administering that to all of the local junior highs. This year, we're doing that versus the big career fair simply because of COVID restrictions and not wanting to go in and spread germs. But we are doing that. And then we're going to use the results from the CIS Junior to specifically target what jobs the junior high kids want at their career fair next year when we can hold it in person versus virtual. So we're kind of trying to work smarter around the COVID restrictions. We're also doing high school and college sponsored career fairs. The photo you see here is from the most recent one at Vienna High School, which was a huge one. I mean, we had, I don't even know, Brooke, maybe 50 employers locally.
Yeah.
It was a big event, and we got to talk with tons of kids. We recruited a ton of kids for our clubs. We got to talk to them about teaching careers. We got to hand out awesome swag that we have had created that the kids really like, which seems to be a good recruiting tool. They want our computer stickers and our lanyards and our cups and all that kind of funny stuff. So Brooke's schools are doing student swaps, which my schools are quite a bit more spread out just because we're the southern half and things tend to be a little bit more rural down here, but I'll let Brooke talk about student swaps up north by her.
Some of you might be familiar with the student swap. Others of you are going, what in the world does that mean? So we are very fortunate that 2 of our local high schools are kind of naturally linked. One of the club sponsors used to attend DuQuoin High School, so he's linked to that. And so he knows the DuQuoin club sponsor in the school, and he teaches in Carterville. So they've been communicating, and they want to do a student swap with their club students in the Educator Rising Club. And what that would consist of is taking each other's students to the opposite school, letting them be in that club so they can see the school climate, the school culture, go through those classes with a different school, go through a club meeting with a different club sponsor so they can really get an idea that how a school climate and culture changes, even though you are just different towns in the next town over. So they're really excited. The kids are so over the top about getting to do a student swap, you know, and get to go into different classrooms and different experiences. And that's what this is about, is learning about different cultures of different schools and what you can bring back and start in your own. A different way that I think Hannah forgot to mention on our junior high career fairs, we're doing that as a way to feed into the Educators Rising Club the freshmen that are coming in. So any of the students that identify that they are interested in education, we will have those students' names and be able to disseminate those to the club sponsors. So it's a really great way to keep recruiting and feeding into the education club in the high schools. Hannah did mention that we have tons of guest speakers coming. We have guest speakers, a mentor from Golden Apple. We have guest speakers from the St. Louis City Museum, just trying to do career exploration about you can be an educator, do what you love, and share that knowledge with other people. That makes you an educator. So just doing a lot of different things. Going to colleges is huge. Taking these, it's great fun. I don't know if you've ever done it, but take a group of high school kids to a college visit. You'll never forget the day. It's tons of fun and they learn so much. So it's something we're encouraging our education clubs to do, to take just those education students to go check out an education department to see what they have to offer. Next slide. And so team-based challenges. I think everybody is a little bit kind of maybe up in the air. They're not sure what a team-based challenge is. How do I get started on a team-based challenge? Do I put it into the natural progression of what we do? So some of the things that our sponsors have come up with, the teacher at Vienna, she is a rock star. She has kind of followed a 4-H team leader program. Hannah, I want to let you talk about it because you were actually there for the day.
Yes, I got to help with this program, and this is amazing. If any of you have our local high school teachers or are running a dual credit education program like this, this has been amazing. So 4-H, we've been collaborating with them, and they will come in, and you can kind of see in this picture here, the kids are building little terrariums. This is our education club. They had this spread out over 5 days, and 4-H came in for hour-long sessions, and they turned our students into 4-H team leaders. They taught them all the background information and took them through all the guidelines of what they needed to be official 4-H team leaders. And then once they did that, the kids get access to all of these really cool activities. So our education club spent a week practicing these different activities and learning how to teach them to the schools. They made terrariums, they made pillows, they did a baking activity, and they made greeting cards for the local nursing home. And they then 4-H will supply all of those things to you free of charge, enough to take out to your local elementary schools. So our students learned that, and now they got together and planned out which grade levels each is for and how they can tie it into the content that teacher is teaching. And now the week after Thanksgiving, they will be taking these lessons with the materials they got from 4-H and actually teaching each of these lessons in local elementary schools. So it's a pretty cool program, and it's completely free of charge. 4-H provides all of that. It's pretty great. So we have been really enjoying that program and trying to get more schools involved because it's a lot of fun.
And one of my schools that is in the Johnny Logan district, they decided team-based challenge is things that the students saw within the schools that they saw as an issue or an injustice that needed to be addressed. So of course, they did a team-based challenge on how they can become better recyclers at the school and what they could do to fix it. Another one was putting positive image quotes in all of the girls' bathrooms on the mirror. So just something that they see as an issue, that can also be a team-based challenge. So how does it represent an issue within our school? How do we work together to solve it? How does it tie into our community and our values within the school? A lot of schools are doing that. Hannah actually had one of her schools, I believe it was Cobden, present to the school board meeting and other organizations about what the Educator Rising program is. So they developed their own presentation, why this is important, why this needs to be continued. They got a huge round of applause. I mean, everybody was super excited to present to the school board. I would be terrified as a high school sophomore or junior. These kids loved it, and it made such a huge impression about going to present and showing them this is what it means to be able to articulate something to, you know, one of your sponsors or one of the people that is regulating your school district. Hannah talked a little bit about our Touch of Nature trip that we want to do. We want to try to create a regional approach with that Touch of Nature. So even though that'll be team building, it will still be linking up schools to each other. So creating that regional approach. I know that Hannah, you put in the Pen Pal program. So if you want to talk about that one.
Yeah, so I'll talk about Cobden again, because that's who's doing this program, but they're one of our schools that already had a very established program when we came in. So they've been kind of leading the charge on a lot of stuff. They're working on their diversity in schools dual credit course. And as part of that, they established a international Pen Pal program, and they are then taking all of the information that they learn and presenting it at school meetings, at school board meetings, to various clubs and throughout their community. They also, Cobden has like an international night that they do every year. So they're working towards presenting at that big event at the end of the year.
Next slide, please. And then the work-based experiences. So a lot of people want to know if a work-based experience is embedded into the courses or if it's a standalone extracurricular activity. So we have a couple of schools that have actually embedded these things into their dual credit courses. So of course, tutoring at the elementary and junior high levels. So you saw the picture, I think, of the students sitting outside in the hallway, and they look like they were doing one-on-one. So that would be the tutoring that part of the, I believe it's intro to education, that they go into the elementary schools within their district, and they have hands-on time working with a mentor teacher, kind of guiding the young students into what it means to be a teacher and what that looks like. And then we also have peer teaching. Johnston City is doing peer teaching. They also do peer tutoring, but that is part of the curriculum that he is teaching there. It's part of that peer teaching. So I know that one of you had asked a question and I kind of answered back a little bit. I think that Johnston City does have like basic teaching subjects that they want these students to create mini lessons on and do peer teaching to the class. I think that the biggest one that they did, the students were a little nervous about presenting. So it was about diversity and racial injustice. So they brought in all of the teachers' aides into the classroom to be the students. They wanted to try out on a kind of a neutral party. So they did teach, they do peer teaching. So the teachers walking them through the parts of the lesson, what's important, how to create an objective, how to tie it to standards, how to teach to different learning styles, the different teaching styles. So he's walking them through this and then helping them build lesson plans on how to teach mini lessons. So that is embedded into the curriculum. Leading enrichment programs. I know that Hannah, you had, which school was it that was doing the enrichment programs in your portion?
I know Vienna did some, but I know there's one up north too, right? That does the summer.
The Educators Rising Club does every year a summer enrichment camp where their club members decide on a topic, create all the lessons and curriculum. They invite the local grade school students out. It's 2 weeks throughout the summer, and they provide food and everything for them. And they get a chance. I think that last summer it was STEM-based activities. I think they're going to build off of STEM-based activities again next summer, but I know they just did one this past weekend as well. So that's a really great way that it's not necessarily embedded into the curriculum, but it's something that their team does that helps them empower them to create the whole curriculum. I know that Vienna has a lot of students that are placed in the childcare centers. They're close to the high school. So that is another work-based experience. And A lot of people don't think of early childhood when they think of an education teacher, but right now that is a huge hot topic and a very good career that is just needing lots and lots of people. So we're trying to empower the childcare providers and students to go and at least explore that as an option. And there are before and after school programs that students do. I believe Vienna High School does like homework cafe. They do before school or after school peer tutoring. So there's lots of different options that you can do work-based experiences just based on what you have close to your high school and what's available. So of course, our next slide is just our thank you slide for questions and answers. I know you don't have a lot of time for that, but go ahead and type anything that you have into the chat and we'll kind of reflect back on any questions that you have. I know it was a fast and furious follow this rabbit trail with us, but we'd love to answer any questions. So give us an email if it's a long question and you want to kind of start going back and forth, but our social media accounts are listed there. We have all of our club sponsors that they send us activities and pictures that they're doing. So we post those on there and we encourage other clubs to get on there and snoop around what other people are doing so they can steal that idea and replicate it in their own. So really go check them out. There's a lot of good activities that are being produced and displayed on those media websites. So like I said, give us a shout if you have any questions.
And we do have a few moments. So if you have any, we could take maybe like 2, potentially 3 questions, depending on what the 2 questions are, maybe, right? But feel free to unmute yourself or put that in the chat. But we could do some Q&A here, and I can stop sharing too for a moment so we can see each other.
I don't know that I have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for the 4-H idea and opportunity. We'll definitely explore that in our region and maybe reach back out with questions. But that was something that I definitely learned from your presentation. And so I appreciate that.
It is a super cool program. So I hope other people will take advantage of it. We loved it.
I would also just make a quick plug. Valleys as the same grant that you all have. And last year we used a portion of our regional grant money to develop 4 videos about why a young person should become a teacher. And the 4 videos are less than 3 minutes. They're on our website. When I just put they're on our YouTube website, YouTube link, whatever.
I believe we stole those and posted them on our social media too.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm so glad they're getting used around the state. Oh, that makes my heart like warm. Thank you for that. And they're in Spanish and they're closed captioned. So please, the grant from the state, I think the intent is that we all share all the good work we do.
Yeah.
So they're there.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Brooke and Hannah while we have them here? And again, graciously offered up their contact information. If you can't quite think of it today, or if you have a question that's a little bit weedier, please feel free to reach out to them.
I don't know if they're staying on or not, but if not, that's fine. I know you all have lives. But I have to say, if nothing else comes from this call today, I hope that the three of us can connect. That was amazing. I get so many questions about, well, how do we build this? And I would love to connect and share what you're doing all over the state. And I just, the 3 of us we have to connect after today.
Absolutely. So, sure.
Getting emails from me, and this was just I cannot thank you enough for your presentation. It was just so eye-opening. So thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
I can't wait to connect. That'll be awesome.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, I'll turn to Lindsay here in a moment, but thank you again, Brooke and Hannah. And I know I did a little shout out to the swag in the chat, but there really is, like, I know we've talked about this in different spaces, but like the education profession and how we continue to uplift it as a really meaningful, like fulfilling thing to like explore, right? Like I know swag is swag, but like it's something, right? All kinds of companies have swag, like education have swag. Yeah, look at that. I love it. I have my sticker on my whiteboard over here in my office too. And my daughter loves the cup, the like one green cup. It is now hers. I can't like have it anymore. But I just think it's really like lifting up students and really showing them like you are a part of something like really important and big here and meaningful. And it's those seemingly little things like that that make a big impact on students. So thank you all. And yes, I'll be reaching out about the 4-H thing too. I think I want to capture that as like a statewide template to share. All right, I'm going to get my screen up here again. Thank you again, Brooke and Hannah. And again, please feel free to put questions in the chat or their infos up here too. And I'll link the presentation here again in just a moment. But otherwise, I'm going to turn it here to our next presenter.
All right. Well, thank you so much for handling the slides, Heather. And again, just Brooke and Hannah, I am blown away by your presentation, and we have to connect, and I'm excited to connect. So that was a great, I guess, precursor to what I'm going to talk about, which is Educators Rising. Next slide, please, Heather. Thank you. So, you know, we can sit around and talk about the challenges to teacher recruitment all day, but what I found was, so just a little background about me. I never, ever thought that I would be a state coordinator trying to build a state program. I am a teacher through and through. I learned about Educators Rising in 2018 when my life kind of changed overnight when I was named the Illinois Teacher of the Year, which I didn't even know was a thing. And they said, well, you know, you're going to have to pick a platform. And I said, well, all I care about is teacher recruitment. Like, that's my jam. That's what I try to do in my small rural high school. I truly believe teaching is the greatest profession in the world, even now. And I'm now in a role where I work to support future teachers as an early career development director for the IEA. But I learned about Ed Rising during my year when I had the great privilege to travel the country and to learn about what other states were doing to tackle all of these challenges. And I walked into a classroom in California where they were piloting this new thing called Ed Rising curriculum. And there was this incredible educator at the front of a room teaching this pathway class. They had created partnerships with neighboring colleges and universities, and students were in the process of planning for a summer camp that they were going to be leading. And it blew my mind. And I basically was like, what is this? I need to know more. You know, what is this thing? And so I came back to Illinois and found out that we had some pockets of Ed Rising clubs happening throughout the state, but that we weren't a state affiliate. And so I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in just a bit. But before I talk about that, so all of the aforementioned has allowed me to be in some spaces I never thought I would be in. Mainly spaces with major stakeholders talking about, you know, how do we positively impact teacher recruitment efforts in Illinois? And what I found is that there are two very different camps. There are those who think, hey, at this point, we're so desperate, we just need warm bodies in a classroom. And then there are those of us who go, well, wait a minute. We cannot compromise the integrity of teacher preparation in doing so, right? And so what I love about Ed Rising is that I think it is something that everyone can get behind. There are a lot of differing opinions when we have these conversations, but we all want to tackle these challenges. And I believe Ed Rising is a way to do it. Next slide, please. And so I came back to Illinois and I started learning more about Ed Rising at the national level, mainly about like a lot of the partnerships that they had. And then I learned even more and learned that their curriculum, and that, again, there is a club model and a curriculum model, and both can be very, very robust. Hannah and Brooke did a fabulous job of talking about how, you know, it's scalable, it's customizable. If you have a club model, there are, you know, you can make it your own. But I kept saying, why are we not tackling teacher recruitment in the same way as FFA and FCCLA, like all around? And this really is, to me, made sense. And so I got back to Illinois and I learned that they had all of these partnerships and that there were pockets of Ed Rising happening throughout the state, mainly at the club model. And so then I learned that in order to have access to the curriculum that I had seen in California, that we needed to become a state affiliate of Ed Rising. And in addition to that, I basically spent the last, 3.5 years lobbying, basically talking to policymakers about why we should fund Ed Rising in our state. And in March of 2020, we ended up on the governor's desk. And then COVID happened. And I was so certain we were going to get all this funding. And then, of course, that didn't come to fruition, which doesn't mean it won't. But what did happen I'd like to point out the two little in the bottom left corners of each, or excuse me, the bottom left and right corners of this slide are Illinois State Board of Education and the Illinois Teacher of the Year Network. So the State Board of Ed basically said, I'll tell you what, you know, we've learned a lot. We're going to make you a CTSO. So we are Illinois' newest CTSO, Career Technical Student Organization, which means that schools can access Perkins funding and other grant opportunities if they want to purchase the curriculum. But the big thing was that, you know, we decided we didn't want to wait another year to try and like start rolling this out in Illinois and spreading the good news. And so my buddy, I'm the vice president of the Illinois State Teachers of the Year, and Steve Elza is the president. He said, Linz, why can't we just run this? Why can't we just roll this out through Illstoy? And so basically Illstoy has partnered with ISB, and we're trying to spread the good news about Ed Rising to schools. Next slide, please. And so, you know, Brooke and Hannah did such, again, an amazing job of talking about, I believe that creating pathways boils down to one word, and that is partnerships. We have to do a better job of creating partnerships between junior high, and I love that you mentioned that, Brooke and Hannah, high schools, and then of course, colleges and universities. We have to create things like dual credit opportunities and scholarship opportunities to make pathways into teaching more equitable for students, because let's be clear, we don't even make it equitable to choose teaching as a profession. And by that, I mean, in what other profession are you expected to work full time, but take a semester off of work? Because as we know, a lot of colleges encourage their students not to work while they're student teaching. It's just, you know, and that's another thing I'm working on right now. But Ed Rising, again, was something I felt like everybody could get behind, and it is a really high quality introduction into teacher preparation. Additionally, the curriculum was written by teachers for teachers. I know a number of the teachers who served on the committee that wrote this curriculum, and it is amazing. When you first get access to the curriculum online, it's very overwhelming. There's a 1, a 3, and a 5-day listen for all of their standards and all of their themes, which I'll talk about in a moment. And I'm not going to give you a big overview of the curriculum itself, because that's a different rabbit hole to go down, and I'm only given like 15 to 20 minutes. All right, next slide. But if you would like to learn more, please reach out. We'll do next slide. I'm going to skip the history of how we kind of came to be a fruition. But ultimately, we're trying to figure out who will the next generation of students, of teachers we're counting on, who are those people going to be? And they're sitting in our classrooms, which suggests another thing that I love about Ed Rising is it capitalizes off of the great teaching that is happening throughout our state in order to engage in recruitment efforts, rather than leaving it up to the policymakers and, you know, people in Springfield to figure this out, so many of whom haven't even been in education. Teachers are the most uniquely positioned to market our profession to students and to help create those partnerships and those opportunities for students to experiencing the joy of teaching. And I firmly believe this. And I love that this model really focuses on, you know, we want great teachers leading this work throughout our state. All right, next slide, please, Heather. Thank you. We also know that over 60%, and that's actually a little higher now, I believe it's 63% of students teach within 20 miles of where they grew up. We also know that 80% of the teaching profession is white women. We're a dime a dozen. So we need to be doing a better job of recruiting. You know, our profession should be as diverse as the communities in which we teach. And as we know, that's currently not the case. Go ahead, next slide, Heather. Thank you. So again, teachers are essential, and that has been, there's a ton of research that other states have done that say we need to tap into good teaching that's happening to create these opportunities for students. Next slide, please. And so this is kind of the model overall, and it's a little hard for me to see on my phone, but essentially, again, keyword is partnerships. We want to make sure, another thing I love about Ed Rising, as I said, is it's customizable, it's scalable for communities. So Hannah and Brooke, I am from Mount Vernon, and I went to school at SIU, Carbondale, go Salukis. And now that I live further north, the geographically and just from an economic standpoint, from all of these, it's a very different world up here than it is in Southern Illinois, and you mentioned that. And something that I love about Ed Rising is that it allows us the capacity that even though we're very different, what I'm trying to do is build this network of people who are as passionate about teacher recruitment as I am, so that we can all work together as a state, but without ignoring that we all have very different challenges that we're navigating in the midst of this. And that's another thing that I love about Ed Rising, is that it is customizable and scalable to communities. Next slide, please. Our mission is, oh, and by the way, I say I am not a paid spokesperson for Ed Rising. This is just a passion project of mine. And then they happen to name me the state coordinator. So here I am trying to figure out how to build a program. But they're basically, what I love about Ed Rising is their mission to not only, helping to recruit the next generation of teachers, but also their commitment to diversifying our profession so that our profession reflects the demographics of the communities in which we teach, and that they are not playing around. They're very committed to that. Next slide, please, Heather. And we also want to create a clear pathway for, we don't think that this has to be rocket science. And if I've learned anything, it's that if you want something done, ask a teacher. And so I love, again, that this really focuses on teachers identifying, students who might be interested in the profession and helping to mold them, again, as early as at the junior high level. Next slide, please. So standards, we're very committed to understanding the profession, but also a real commitment in engaging in reflective practices. There are a lot of incredible things that happen when you have access, or that can happen when you have access to the curriculum. Lots of ideas for building clinical experiences in for students. But again, Brooke and Hannah did a beautiful job of saying you don't have to have the curriculum. You can strictly have the club model and still create those kinds of experiences for students. Next slide, please, Heather. And then the curriculum, from a curriculum standpoint, we are very committed to cultural competence, fairness, equity, and diversity, reflective practice, ethics, collaboration, social justice and advocacy, and self-efficacy. Next slide, please. And another thing that we are known for, our micro-credentials, which I'll talk about in a bit. But I mentioned, dual credit opportunities and scholarship opportunities. There are some amazing things happening at Aurora University. They have a very robust Ed Rising club model. They have partnered, I can't remember if it's 9 or 12 high schools, but those feed Aurora University. Pam Ferdinand is doing amazing work there and has been for years. It actually was one of the first contacts when I got back to Illinois and heard they had an Ed Rising club. And she helped me to advocate for this and to get CTSO recognition. And we continue to advocate for funding together, because if I'm going to be straight, my hope is that someday, based on some of the collaborative partnerships I'm cultivating, that we can gift this curriculum to every high school in the state. And that's not enough. That won't tackle that alone won't solve our recruitment issues, but I truly believe in this curriculum. And I say that as somebody who is not a packaged curriculum teacher. And I think that this could change our approach, statewide to teacher recruitment. And so, but creating those partnerships is also a major part of that. Next slide, Heather. And so we also have a great online community. So students, they can access just by being a part of the club and making sure all of your students register, which is another big piece of this, whether you're club or curriculum, students need to register, because then that gives us kind of a running tally of how many students we have who are functioning in the club. And that helps us to advocate and justify all of our asks. But even just from the club model, once they register, they get access to national board certified teachers. They get access to all kinds of things that I've listed there. I won't read to you. Sorry, I was trying to read the chat. But it's really, really important that if students are having access to the curriculum or the club model, that they register on edrising.org. There's a join button, and then that way they can access all of these things. Again, a very robust online community. Next slide. They also get updates about national conferences and our state conference, which I'm very excited about, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But another thing I've had people ask about are our micro-credentials. We are very, we have micro-credentials that students can earn. And this is where a lot of those dual credit opportunities are coming into play with high schools and colleges as partnerships. So we have micro-credentials in anti-biased instruction, classroom culture, collaboration, formative assessment, and learner engagement. Next slide, please, Heather. And students can acquire these micro-credentials. Basically, there are 3 parts. They have some kind of a, they'll answer some questions about teaching. They'll provide some artifacts, so maybe video of them teaching or, lesson plans they've written. And then ultimately they respond in some kind of reflection. It could be an essay, it could be a video project, and all of these are required in that online community, but they have to demonstrate anywhere between 5 to 15 hours of work in each of these micro-credentials in order to acquire them. But again, a lot of really cool work is happening around dual credit opportunities with those micro-credentials, which there was another thing I was going to say that I just lost it. But that's, I have a lot of people who ask, well, what if we don't purchase the curriculum? Could we still access the micro-credentials? And the answer is yes. That's kind of an interesting conversation to be had, where I can put us in contact with Albert Chen at PDK and then he can talk through that. But even if you just have the club model, but you would like students working towards those micro-credentials, we can also make that happen, which again creates some really cool dual credit opportunities as they go to college. All right, next slide, please, Heather. So how are we preparing teachers to lead this work? There is a 3-day teacher leader training. We had one of our first teachers in the state who was going to be using the curriculum to teach. She contacted me and said that she had gone. She was incredibly skeptical and said that it was life-changing, that she was throwing out everything she had used in previous years when she was teaching a pathway course prior to Ed Rising. She said that everything available to teachers was just overwhelming but wonderful, and that she had a wonderful experience at the training and that it was very robust. So that just kind of goes to show, there is an online community for the teachers who are leading this work as well to collaborate and to work together. But this is definitely, they've made this so that teachers are not having to reinvent the wheel, right? Which is especially important right now when teachers are already pushing the boundaries of what a 24-hour day can hold. The curriculum is amazing. And I wouldn't say that. I have no reason to say that other than, I believe in it and I want to impact recruitment in our state. Next slide. And so they go to a 3-day teacher leader training. They're prepared for kind of what's expected of them. They talk about the national conference and the state conference. We are actually in the process of, we had a virtual fall conference that obviously wasn't everything that I wanted it to be, but if all goes well, we will have our first in-person state conference. I believe tentatively it is scheduled for March 11th. And as of this week, I believe it is scheduled for March 11th at ISU. Still working out a couple of the details to solidify that date before I let everybody know, but I'm going to let all of you know that it is tentatively scheduled for March 11th in person at ISU. We're going to have incredible presenters, former Ed Rising students who have benefited from the club model. We're going to have state teachers of the year. They are speaking and leading breakout sessions, and it's going to be a really empowering day for all of our aspiring educators. Next slide, please, Heather. And so as kind of I'm wrapping up here, I'll go ahead and those are just some of the things that we can provide teachers with if they are wondering. We have both curriculum maps and expectations and years at a glance, etc., for both clubs and curriculum models. Next slide, Heather, please. Got Heather working overtime answering the chat. And next slide. So usually then people go, okay, so I'm interested now what? Well, normally we set up a meeting. We talk about, do you want like the chapter model or the club model or the curriculum model? I use chapter and club interchangeably. Cost, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're going to if you want access to the curriculum, just the micro-credentials. And then if you're interested in that, we can talk funding options, which admittedly is not my area of expertise. Again, I never thought I would be in this role building a state program. And oftentimes when people are like, let's talk money, I say, let me put you in touch with the people who are in charge of that. Next slide, please. But the things I just want you to take away from this presentation are that this is by teachers for teachers leading this work. It is aligned to a professional continuum. We have the support of AFT, of NEA, and all of their state affiliates. It's customizable for your students and for your community. If you have great teachers in your districts or in your buildings, that is who we want leading this work. And it really is an incredible introduction to teacher preparation, which I would not be, putting my name on it and singing Ed Rising's praises if that wasn't the case. There is nothing in this for me other than I want this to be my legacy, that we have done something while I'm here on earth to positively impact recruitment efforts in our state. Next slide. I think that's it. So that's my email address. And I'll open it up for any comments or questions at this time.
Lindsay, I got a little distracted, admittedly. The March 11th conference that's tentatively set for ISU, the audience is high school students that want to become educators.
High school that want to become educators. We're also, though, going to have college students who have Ed Rising clubs. They will also be invited as well. I have some interesting ideas about how to start utilizing some of our college club members as, mentors to maybe our high school students. Yes, it's open to high school students and college students with the club model.
And then ISU does a fall Future Teachers Conference in October. Yes. So is it similar to that? Is the audience different?
Similar, yes, actually. So
okay.
I present every year, and Kelly Appelis, who plans that, and she is who is helping me plan this conference. Yes, so it will be similar in style to that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of shout outs in the chat here for all of you all. Thank you all for joining. I love these. IWIN is like probably one of the favorite things I do in my job. But I am able to keep this open. I don't know if Lindsay or anybody's able to stay, but if there are questions, we'll hold out here for a moment. But thank you all again for joining and wanting to do our next session in IT. And I actually, one last thing I want to show you all, if you're still here for a moment. We have some upcoming conversations, something new I'm going to try out here with IWIN, doing community convo around COVID protocols and work-based learning. I know this has popped up a couple of different times. So they're not going to be recorded. They're literally just going to be a moment to come together and talk about how you're doing that. I don't have any answers for you necessarily, right? Kind of thinking through all the different logistical things and compliance things you have to do in your spaces, but they're there for you. So please register for those, join us for that conversation. If you can't join, but you have any kind of best practices or lessons learned you want to send to me to then share kind of in those conversations, would appreciate that too. Put some overview resources in here for all the different pieces. And then I can actually stop share. The next IWIN, I want to focus in on IT. I would love any recommendations from you all on folks who can present along the continuum on IT would be wonderful. But thank you again to all of our presenters. Truly appreciate you. You do incredible work. And excited, one day the students you work with will be in that chat box, right? Getting answered as one of the most influential people in someone's life. It's an invaluable thing to do that for someone. Yeah, any last questions or other pieces before we close here?
I would just tell anyone that has the Educator Pathway grant and maybe has an opportunity because of the grant to do, to maybe bring in a speaker that maybe they couldn't afford otherwise. We just did a event yesterday with Batavia High School. They hosted, it was a regional event. We had over 300 students from about, I think it ended up being about 20 different high schools. And Mr. Reed, who's kind of a YouTube sensation, Chicago public school teacher, graduate of EIU, was our keynote. He did such a powerful message. So he delivered the keynote twice. He's worth every penny of his speaking fee. Very inspirational. And also really had a call to action for the students that were in the audience that are people of color to become teachers and to help us diversify the teaching force. So can't say enough good things about his presentation. And so if you've got some resources in an event, he does a really great job with young people.
That's a great flag. Thanks, Cassie. If you have a chunk of money here, it's like, let's do some fun stuff with it, right? Not all of it might be sustainable, but we can definitely do some fun things and continue to think about that sustainability piece.
Take care, everyone. Thanks so much, Heather. These are always so good. I'm so excited for the
Awesome.
4-H idea from Hannah and Brooke. So
Yeah, I love that. I'm especially thinking about those connections, right? There's a lot of schools that have 4-H, right? And I already work with 4-H, and now you can just marry the two in a sense, right? And kind of collaborate on that. I think so often we're always all trying to create from scratch, right? When there's actually so many models and so many opportunities and organizations who are already out there ready to go to support you.
thanks, everyone.
So Lindsay's point about partnerships, right? Find those partnerships, build those relationships, and away you go. Well, thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you at the next assignment.